Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining. We will continue our journey today with Yalla Salesforce. Over the last couple sessions, we covered a lot together. So we started with what Salesforce and what's Trailhead and what are the different career paths. And we understood more about the platform itself. And then we said, let's go for the back end understanding. So we started to cover modules like data modeling, formulas, pick list, and then we switch gear into the front end, Lightning App Builder, and we built a whole solution together. We defined the new apps, we customized page. We learned a lot so far. So today we're gonna cover the user management, how we create users, what users means, how we grant different permissions for different users, and how Salesforce is very flexible at the org level, at the object level, at the field level, and finally at the record level. All right, so let's get started. User management. What is the user? Administrator, you perform user management tasks like you create new users, you edit existing users, someone forgot his or her password, you reset the password, you grant permissions, configuring data access, you do a lot. So who is the user? A user is someone who need to log into Salesforce. Can be your employee and it can be your customer. So a user, anyone who log into Salesforce, either employee, like sales rep, managers, IT specialists, and so on, or external users. So we have part of the different clouds that Salesforce is offering, an experience cloud, which allow you to create a website, a portal that people can log into it and see certain aspects of the platform. You have the full control as well to allow them to see certain records, certain objects, and so on. You can build a customer portal or a partner portal in those experience cloud sites. So, but if you need someone to access your Salesforce org, they need to have a user. A user account exists for every user in Salesforce. The user account identifies the user. The user account setting determines username. So you need, when you log into Salesforce, so if I went to like login dot salesforce.com, the first thing is what is my username and then what is my password. So the username is uniquely identifier for me across the entire Salesforce. So it's not only my instance, it's not only my server, it's unique across. But the email is where, when I forget my password and I want to reset it, this is where it can Salesforce send you the link in order to reset your password, for example. Email address can be shared across different instances of Salesforce. First name is an optional, last name will be required. Alias is an abbreviation for username and password, for your first name and last name. If I remember right, it's the first letter of your first name and the 4 letters of your last name. It's shortened for it. Nickname, license. License is very important because license determining what level of access you will have into this org. With every license, it comes features and responsibilities and objects and so on within the platform. So license is a required in order to be able to get into Salesforce. It's like the contract between you and the Salesforce. Profile, we will be discussing a lot about profiles, but profile for now is a persona and profile is required field. You cannot set up a user without a profile. Role will determine where you are from the role hierarchy, or I'll simplify by the org chart, where you are, and this will be a tool to open for you record access. All right, don't worry, we will learn more about that. You view and manage user from user page in setup. The user list shows all the users in Salesforce. Create one or more users. You can create one or more, up to 10. Reset password for selected users. View user detail page, name, alias, username. Edit the user detail and log in as any user if the system permission is enabled. What that means? That means I might have a colleague, both of us are system admins, or he or she has a different level of persona, and I want to test why he or she can see certain things, or I want to troubleshoot anything. So I need to log in as my colleague so I can see his or her experience. All right, key terms. We have thrown many terms. Let's dig deep. Username, as we mentioned, it's a uniquely identifier for you across Salesforce. Each user has both username and email address. The username must be formatted like an email. So the format, it has to be like an email, blah, 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 at something dot something. Must be unique across Salesforce. Again, it's not for the instance, it's not for your organization. It can be the user email address as long as it's unique. But if I consumed my email within this specific org, I cannot use the same exact email. If I consumed the email as a username in that specific org, I cannot use the same email as another username in another instance. I hope it's clear. Any questions? All right. User license. A user license determines which feature the user can access in Salesforce. So you can allow user access to standard Salesforce features and chatter. I want people to be able to access CRM functionalities plus Sales Cloud plus chatter. So I assigned for them I got like the Sales Enterprise Edition, and I assigned for them a Salesforce license, so they will be able to do everything I have in here, anything related to core, Salesforce, and chat. But if I have another users, which they will not be interested to do the same job function for the people who need access to CRM, and they just need to use chatter. Accordingly, there is no time to invest in a Salesforce license. We can give them chatter-free licenses, right? And there is another module talking about the Salesforce license, additions, and how they bundle the user access and permissions and preferences and add-ins and all of these great stuff. But for now, all what we need to know, in order for a user to be created in a Salesforce instance, we need to have a user license. And based on the license, we will jump next to the profiles. I have profiles that has this specific Salesforce license. Accordingly, if my license as a user is Salesforce, it will enable me to select a profile that is mapped to the same license. Accordingly, this profile will grant for me certain access to the org. It's mainly to determine which objects you will be able to access. It allow you some system permissions. It allow you the login IP addresses that you will be able to allow in order to access this Salesforce instance. It will ask you what is the login hours that you are allowed to be in the Salesforce instance. It will allow you a lot of things. However, there is two different types of tools within Salesforce that enable you to get that access. It's called the profile, which is a required field. Every user in Salesforce instance has to have a profile. But if I want to extend this access, and since I cannot assume I have profile A and profile B, profile A giving me access to certain things and profile B giving me access to another certain things, and I need both. I cannot have two profiles for my user. Every user has a single profile. So in order to expand that access, knowing the limitation that the user can only have one profile, they invented this permission set concept that you can add on to your access by assigning those permission sets. All right, so let's read what they are saying in here. Each user has one profile that defines default settings. It's possible to use profile to grant permissions and access to user. However, we recommend grant user the minimum access. So there is a big guiding principle in here. Means the least privilege. So I have a lot of tools in order to open access, but I have a very limited tools in order to close access. So you need to take the principle of least privilege. Accordingly, since you have tools to open up things, so the best practice is to have a minimum access Salesforce profile. And even there is a standard profile called minimum access, which will give you the bare minimum access to your Salesforce instance. And then, all right, so this will not allow me to do my job. What will be the workaround for that? Create a permission set to start opening access, right? Even down the road, Salesforce will be moving some functionalities, which we used to do it in the profile, into the permission sets. So it will not be accessible, like object access will not be accessible down the road. Forward-looking statement will not be available in the profile. So it's good if you are starting a new implementation to start from putting all of these object access into permission sets, right? So I hope the difference is clear. We're going to have some hints on, and you'll be able to see the difference. Right, so profile, permission sets. So if I am looking for user, object, field permissions, custom permissions, all of that, it's the best practice to put it in the permission set. Object permission, so let me go for, let's open the instance so we can stop theory, and then let's put it in action. I'll just launch any work. Okay, I'll do this. Perfect. All right. My user, let me open my user. We learned before about the Salesforce inspector. I would recommend to use it. So I'll open my user in here. And the other way is set up user, and you'll come land into the same page. You can see in here that I have a one field in the user. There is no point to have, or there is no option to have multiple profiles. It's a field within this user object. All right. So in here, this is the profile, but you can see that I have a related list, which is called permission set. And when I click the profile, you will see all of these options. However, it's redundant between the profile and permission sets, but you still have both options for now. This is the profile access. You will find the page layout assignments. We learned about page layout before. You will find the field level security. You will find the custom app settings. You will find the connected app settings, tab settings, a lot of details. And even it will go over record type settings and so on, up to the some permissions there. And then it will take you to the object access and so on. But there is an enhanced view for this one. Management, go to the setup, management settings. And from the management settings, you have those things. So you have an enhanced profile user interface. As soon as you put this, and you can even enable profile filtering. And let's go back to the profile. To the profiles. And from here, go to the system admin, which we were in. You can use those ones in here. System administrator. Now you have like a more, it's an enhanced UI for the permissions. So you will be able to see that I can assign certain apps for the profile. I can assign connected app. We touched it quickly on the connected apps when we were talking about the app builder and how can we make another systems to connect to our Salesforce instance and so on, and how it's being used in the single sign-on if your Salesforce is the identity provider and so on. And you can have access to certain objects. You can give apps, we mentioned, Apex classes, Visual Force pages, flow, custom permissions. So all of these different permissions can be assigned on the profile level. Plus, there are system access, system permissions, login hours, login IP ranges, all of these you can set in here. You can even set some policies around the session, around the password, and so on. This is how the profile, remember it. So I'll duplicate it, and I will show you how the permission set look like. Permission set in here. Test permission set. And again, it will allow me to put certain license. That means the user that have only Salesforce license will be able to get this permission set assigned. So in here, I don't have all the options, but I have most of them. So everything related to apps in here, assigned apps, objects, epics, visual force, flows, the whole section on the top in here is common between the profile and permission set. Accordingly, the best practice from Salesforce, do not put those permissions which are available for you in the permission set in the profile. Make sure that you always use the permission set for that. But what is missing from the permission set? All of the login IP addresses, all the login hours, session settings, password policies, all of these will remain within the profile. Is it clear? Any questions? Sounds perfect. All right. Back to the module. Just wanted to visualize it. Here we go. Actually, we are in here. All right. So we talked about the profiles versus permissions. Roles determine record access. So profile and permission set is what you can do in the system. What are the permissions? Can you access this object or not? Can you read that object or not? Can you edit this object or not? Can you see this field or not? Can you write this field or not? So if we are back in here and I went back to the permission set and I went back to the object settings and I said, let me go for the accounts. It's create access in here, read, create, edit, delete, read or edit access for certain fields. View or modify all is superpower at the object level from the permission set that you can see all the data regardless what is the setup for the organization from data perspective. We'll be discussing the org by default and so on now, but it's what you can do, read, create, edit, delete, and so on, and tab settings. But the role mainly is record access tool. What I mean by that, let me go back in here. All right. So the role determines what user can see in Salesforce based on where they are located in role hierarchy. Users at the top of the hierarchy can see all the data owned by the user below them. User at lower level cannot see data owned by user above. All right. So let's go to the role in here. And exactly like that. If I am in here, so it's showing you the role hierarchy. I have a CEO. CEO should be able to see all the data for everyone under him or her in the role hierarchy. But if I am in here in the Western sales rep, accordingly, my manager, who is the Western sales director, should be able to see everybody in this Western sales rep. But the CA sales rep should not be able to see OR sales rep because they are on the same level in the role hierarchy. But whoever is managing them will be able to see them. Whoever is managing him or her will be able to see him or her data plus everyone under him. The CEO should be able to see it all. People in that branch should not be able to see that branch. People in here should not be able to see in here. Even people in here should not be able to see people in here. This is all based on how we set up the data access. But we are talking about the most restrictive access to the data. We'll go for the org-wide default now, and we will be discussing, but everything I am saying in here, if you have the most restricted access to that record. Accordingly, if you have the most restricted, the only one who will be able to see this one, whoever created that record, and anyone above in the role hierarchy, plus the system admin. All right? Sounds perfect. So to go back in here and read it one more time, users at the top of the hierarchy can see all the data owned by the user below them. User at lower level cannot see data owned by user above them. We go, I can see people down, but I cannot see people up our branch unless sharing role granted. All right. What that means, Let me go back in here into the roles. We are saying that people on the top can see. So it's like vertical record access. But what if I want people in here should be able to see all the data for people in there? And this will bring us to another topic, which called sharing rules. I need to share all the data that owned by this specific group, which is the role and subordinates, into another role, into the role hierarchy. So this is called sharing rule. All right, unless sharing rule granted them access. Roles are optional. We can put a role, we can ignore the role, and that's it. Rules are optional, but each user can have only one. If you have an org with many users, you may find it's easier to assign role when adding users. However, you can set up role later on. Roles are only available in those specific editions of Salesforce. Right. This is a sneak peek of the role and role hierarchy, and we'll have way more details later on. Right. Alias, as we mentioned, it's a short name for your, it can be used in the list pages, reports, and so on. And it's by default the first letter of your first name and first four letters of your last name. Guidelines for adding a user. You need to have a username. And the username we mentioned, it's a unique across all Salesforce, and it takes the email format. User must have a username and format for email address, but they don't have to use a real email address. Email, user can have same email address across orgs. Password, you must change their password at the first time. So you can, like, you have a checkbox in order to set the password for the first time. You will be receiving an email, you will verify, you put all the passwords that you will be memorizing, and then you set your password. Login link, user can only use the login link in the sign-in email once. If user follow the link and doesn't set a password, you will need to reset your password one more time. All right. Add a user. You may have already added some users if you launch the setup wizard. However, you will probably need to add users in the future because you are a sysadmin and this is part of your roles and responsibilities. Depending on the size of the organization, you can do it once, you can do it hundreds. And the maximum number of users you can add is determined by user Salesforce edition. How many users available based on how many licenses you purchased. Right. You can add a new user, or you can add multiple users up to 10. So if I came back in here, user, users, and I have here either new user or add multiple users. If you click add multiple users, you have up to 10 users at a time, all right? Number one, and again, giving you whatever is needed in here to go forward. All right. Sounds perfect. All right. Let's create a new user. And as we mentioned, the role, you can leave it blank. In here, the user license is Salesforce, and it's a profile. I'll start with sysadmin. It's an active user. You need to put in here last name, and you need automatically the 1 and 4. Email address, I can use bsmail at salesforce.com. I can share it, but I cannot use the same username across all instances. So I have to say dot user access module. All right, so it will be unique. All right, that's it. This is all what I need. And this is the checkbox, which is important. Generate new passwords and notify user immediately. Accordingly, when I just hit save, the user going to be created, and then email will be sent to that email address, which can be common across different orgs, with a link to verify your access and set your password and so on. Now the user got created. All right. Trace a user. You woke up and you found that this user got compromised, and you are trying to not panic, and you want to just stop it for now, freeze it until you do your due diligence and make sure that everything is safe before you decide to deactivate it. If you want to do that without impacting any ongoing things, and you don't want to lose this license and make it available, you have the option to freeze. Freeze will keep everything as is, but it will be preventing the user from log in to buy for you a time to do whatever you need to do, and then you decide either to deactivate it fully or freeze it. All right, so from setup, you have this option for freeze. And that's it. It's just a click of the button, do your work, and then you can decide to unfreeze it one more time. All right, so this is the freeze. Deactivate the user. In Salesforce, you cannot delete records because this might end up with a risk of leaving some records behind you are owning and so on. So in order to not have an orphan records within the Salesforce instance, Salesforce is not allowing you to delete records, but you can deactivate. The moment you deactivate the user, you have this license back, which you can assign it to another user. All right, so from setup, user, then select user, click edit, and do. What's the difference between freezing and deactivating? Both preventing the user from logging into your account, but one of them is making the license available and the other one is not making it. The other one means the freezing will keep the license as it. You can deactivate user, but you cannot delete them. Deleting the user can result in orphaned records, and as we exactly mentioned. Now you know how to add users and all of these great stuff. Let's jump to the hands-on. Any questions? All right, perfect. Create new trailhead, brand, create problem when you're checking. That's awesome. Company setting, user license to verify that you have one. All right, company information. User licenses. You will be able to see how many licenses you have. The more license you purchase, you will have here more users. I consumed it because I just created a new one. But if I want to get this user back, I will do this and I will say, this is the user I'm using, but this is the user I just created. If I edit, then deactivate, now I'll get this license back. But if I did freeze again, it will not give it back to me. So company information now goes back to the license. I have one remaining license. All right, now it's time to create a new user. Now, I will go for the user that I just deactivated because this is exactly the task. I'll put here my username. They give me a specific alias and enter your email address, enter your initial test user. User must be unique. So I will adjust the username and it can be changed. That's okay. All right, so let's do it. Your initial, so I'll put BI. Test user, I'll put the day of today. It's 2024 12:05. As example, what else? I need a Salesforce license, and I need the best practice, as we mentioned, minimum access, and the role is Western sales team. And I will be just hitting save. Oh, okay. So I'll take this guy. I'll make it active. Okay. I cannot change in the playground, so I will be keep it inactive. I'll go back in here to the users, and I will create a new user. Here we go. Basim, and the username. This is the one. I will be using this one. They give me a specific alias to use, so I'll use it. I'll be using the minimum. User license is Salesforce. I'll be using the minimum access, and I'll be using Western Salesforce. I believe this is all what I need. And let's check the channels. Any questions? Perfect. We made it. All right, so let's dig deeper. Introduction to data security. Now that you know how to add users, you probably want to know how to ensure they can see what they need to see. So we agreed with our big guiding principle in here, least privilege. We just grant them access to the things that will only enable them to do their job. No more, no less. In this unit, you learn how to configure user access to Salesforce records so they can access only the information they need. Salesforce includes simple to configure security control that make you very specific on what the user will and will not be able to do and see. View, create, edit, delete at the object level, at the field level, and all of these great stuff. So you have object access and you give it the CRED access, can configure access at the level of organization level. You can have at the object level and the field level in the individual record as we mentioned. And we have a big module in here that we're gonna cover next session in order to dig deep into every tiny detail. All right, organization. At the highest level, you can secure access to the organization by creating users, setting password, policies, password policies, login IP addresses, login hours, and all of these great stuff. Object. Object level security provides the simplest way to control the user have access to which data. By setting permission on a particular type of object, you can prevent a group of users creating, viewing, editing, deleting any records of that object. You can object permission to ensure interviews can view positions and job applications, but not to edit or delete. So I can give view access, and if it's not restricted data, I can make it public read only. We will be discussing the org by default, or I can give even view all at the profile permission set level, or the sysadmin have very superpower access called view all data, which will give them access to all the data across the org. So you have all these tools which will allow you to restrict the access or open up the access. So you can give them view, but you can take from them the edit and delete. We recommend again for the object access permission and permissions in groups, which we'll be discussing further. Fields. Field level security restricts access to certain fields, even for object a user has access to. For example, you can make the salary field in a position object invisible, but visible to hiring managers and recruiters. So give them view, give them edit. You can give them access to all the fields, but salary should be restricted to certain persona. That means minimum access. Do not give them access at the profile level. You will have a permission set which will give them every access to everything except the salary, and then you will create another permission set for just salary access. So whoever had this specific permission set will be able to see the salary, but everyone else will not. Right. Permission set, a collection of settings and permission that determine what user can do in Salesforce. User permission set to grant access to objects. So again, what you can do. So it doesn't determine which records you have access to, but it determines what you can do in the system, with the exception for view all, modify all, view all data, modify all data. View all data, modify all data, and view all and modify all will give you access to all the records. And this is the only record access permission within the permission set and the profile. But other than that, it just determines what you can do. What's great about permission set, because you can reuse a smaller permission set building blocks, so you can avoid creating dozens or even hundreds of profiles. So before having this magical permission set, we used to have every persona as a profile. And if I need to have a profile for everyone in the organization to be able to see everyone in the HR, but I need only the HR managers to be able to see the salary, we used back in the days before having a permission set to have another profile called HR-manager. And the whole difference between the HR and the HR manager is just this salary access. So imagine that tomorrow you have the super manager and the super manager, and everyone has different access. You would end up with very long list of profile. And what is the disadvantage of that? Imagine tomorrow I'm adding a new field, so rather than changing it in one place and reuse it, we are changing in too many profiles across the organization, which was very painful. But now I can have this core or basic access, which is everybody will have it. Accordingly, if I'm adding a new field, I'll add in one place, and this can be reused across different personas. And then if I need more, let's have a very specialized extra permission set. All right. Smaller pieces, reusability. This is the key words for the permission sets. You can avoid creating dozens or even hundreds of profiles for each user job function. That's why we recommend assigning user, minimum access Salesforce profile, and then permission set. And then we can bundle all of these permission set into a permission set group to construct this persona access or a job function access. I hope it's clear. Permission set, create new permission set, enter the label. We just did that, and you can select what are the permissions. Object settings, so we just saw all of that. So permission, we just created a fake one called test here, if I remember right. And you have all of these access, object settings, and so on. Click edit from this page and hit save. Permission set overview will give you, this is the view summary. It will give you which permission set group is part of it. What is the user permission that is part of this one? Object access, field access, custom permission. This is a new addition to the Salesforce family, and it's awesome. To summarize what this permission set do and to not. All right. So if I went back in this permission set, edit, I will make this system permissions, and I'll make it super powerful by making it view all data. That means that anyone had this specific permission set will be able to see all the data in this org. And with this access, it will give even extra more system access permissions. So now when I go to the view summary, go to the permissions, you'll be able to see that this permission set now granting those accesses. Permission set groups are exactly what they sound like. We are bundling certain permission set to construct this persona and make the assignment task easier. So rather than going for 10 permission set for every user we are doing onboarding to give them those permission sets, we can just bundle them together in permission set group ABC and just assign one thing. You can then assign a permission set group to a user rather than keep track of multiple permission set assignments. User assignment permission set group receive the combined permission for all of them. What makes it so powerful is that you can include a permission set in more than one permission set group, and you can mute specific options. All right, what that means, I can use this test permission set in multiple permission set groups for different personas. But what if it grant extra access and I want to take it from this specific persona? How can I do that? So permission set groups, new permission set group, test permission set group, and I'll hit save. Within this test permission set group, I have this option called the muting permission set in the group. And I can create only one muting permission set. And when I hit save, I will say, all right, within this permission set group, I will be putting the test permission set, add permission, and I will say, let's say, in here, test permission set, here we go, add it. I added the test permission set. but I need to mute certain aspect of it. So I'll go permission set in the group, and I will be hitting this one, and I will say, assume you have a lot of objects access and so on, but I want to give them everything, but the view all, which we granted. So in order to do that, I can edit in here and say, all right, this permission set has access enabled to view all data, but for this specific PSG, I want to mute this option. Accordingly, I'll take out this access from this bundle of permission sets. All right, I hope it's clear. So this is the permission set group, and we said how we bundle them together, how we do the mute option, and so on. All right. From setup, permission set group, as exactly we did, new permission set in the group, you click save, and then add permission set, exactly like what we did with the test permission, and then we can create one new muting option, and we can mute certain permissions in it, and we can hit save. And it's the same thing. So permission set group, you have the view summary, and now it will tell you that this permission is part of it. And you have all of these things. So this is whatever in the permission set group will give you that you have access to those things, or you don't have access to those things, and so on. All right. Finally, is the assignment. Now we created, but no one have it. So within the permission set group, I have this PSG, and I can say manage assignment, and I can say add assignment, and within this one I will be assigning this permission set group to Basim. And you can set expiry and so on, and you can make it for a short period of time and so on. Accordingly, when I go to Basim as a user in here, details, you will find permission set group assignments. Did I assign it? I'm assuming. Permission, set group, test PSG, and manage assignments. Its current assignment is to Basim. And when I go to Basim, permission set group assignments, it's in this PSG in here, right? We did it. Last piece. All of that is the what you can do. Now let's look into what you can see from data access. Organization while sharing defaults. How can I get this? I'll go into the setup and say sharing settings. From sharing settings, you will find this. If I want to see accounts, you will find that for internal people is public read write. For external people is private. What that means? Private means you, if you created a record, you are the only one can be able to see it. Plus anyone above you in the role hierarchy. Plus system admin because they have view all data. Plus anyone has view all access. All of these are overrides. So you put here the default access, which is no one can see it, but you have tools to open up access. But if you make it open for everybody, public read write, that means everybody in the organization can read and edit those records. Accordingly, it's very hard to restrict it. There's a new tool called restriction rules and so on, but it will make your life very hard to restrict it if it's restricted across. So best practice, always remember least privilege. Start small and open up access, not the other way around. So if we looked into our organization here, we are saying for everybody in the organization, publicly write, everyone can see it and everyone can write it. But for external, if we have Experience Cloud and we have people from outside the organization can access the data, no one can see all the accounts. No, only you'll be able to see the accounts that you created or you own. All right. So we can change it. Yes, we can change that. And external access always more restricted than the internal. So I can't make the external access public read write and make the internal private. It's all the other way. So if I went to the account in here or the contact, you will find control by parent, because in the data modeling, we mentioned that we have the master detail relationship. And within the master detail, if you have access to the parent, you should have access to all the child. Accordingly, you don't have option for the master detail relationship. You will find it as controlled by parent. All right. So, but let's go for account, which we were talking about. For the account and contacts. Can I make this private? Yes, absolutely you can. Okay, that means no one will be able. Can I make this public read write? The answer will be no, you cannot do that, because this should be less than this one. All right, so private, yes, it's gonna work. All right, now we change it to the most restricted, and we don't have an option for grant using, so that means role hierarchy is always true. That means it's always enabled for a standard object, but you have the option to switch it off for custom objects. All right, so this is how your brain should be thinking. This is the decision tree or the binary tree in order to decide what will be the org-wide default for that object. All right, who is the most restricted user of this object? Is this ever going to be an instance for this object that user should not be allowed to see? If I have a single record that people in the organization should not be able to see it, accordingly, go to the most restrictive access and then open up. So if the answer is yes, go to private. But if everybody should be able to see it, yes, the next question is everybody should be able to edit it, or I have an instance that people might have a scenario that this should not be editable. If the answer should not be editable for certain instance, make it public read only. If it's open for everybody, make it public read, right? Private, only the record owner and the user above in the role hierarchy can view, edit, and report on those records. Public read only, all user can view and report records, but not edit them. Only the owner and the user above in the role hierarchy can edit those records. Public read write, that means everybody, this is the most open access. Controlled by parent, a user can perform an action such as view, edit, delete on a record based on whether he or she performed the same action on the record associated with it. If you set org-wide sharing setting on an object private or public read only, you can grant user more access record by setting role hierarchy, as we mentioned. You can sharing role, which we discussed briefly. There's another option called manual sharing. I can share a specific record, or you have even programmatic sharing, and you have territory management, and you have a lot of other tools that gonna open access for you. All right, you can only use these features to grant more access. They cannot be used to restrict access. And since I just mentioned restriction rules, can we do it? So in Object Manager, within I created a custom object called test. You will find in here restriction rules, and here it's gonna explain for you what is the org-wide default, and then you added more sharing, and then you are restricting certain records accordingly. This is what you will be able to see. This is a new addition again to the Salesforce sharing model and the access. Right. How can we do this? Sharing settings, we mentioned org-wide default. For each in default internal, select the default access you want to use. To allow employees at higher level, you will need to have grant access using hierarchies. And we already covered that. But since I have a custom object, I will show you sharing settings one more time. And within the sharing settings, I can say edit. You will see grant access using hierarchies is always disabled except for my custom object. I can say, no, I don't want to. All right, we are good. Let's go for the quest. All right, create a permission set, and we will name it account access. New account access. License is none. Enable account object permission. Save. Object settings. Counts. Read, create, edit, delete, view, or modify all. Everything. That means anyone with this permission set will be able to view all the accounts and modify all the accounts regardless what do we have in the org-wide defaults. Enable account field permission, read access and edit access for all fields. This is superpower. Okay. Create permission set group and name it sales users. Save it. All right, so within the sales user, include the account access permissions that we just created. Here we go, since it's saved. And then create a muting permission set, name it sales user muted. Here. We are in the permission set group. We are in the sales users. I will need to create muting permission set in this group. Name it this guy. And it's already in there. All right, so within this, mute account object permission, delete. Object settings, accounts, and I will be hitting edit. What I need to mute, delete, view, or modify all. Those are superpowers. All right. Mute account field permission, edit access for anywhere, revenue, and customer priority. Anywhere, revenue, and customer priority. Assign the permission set group to user you created in previous unit. And so I will go back in here, back to permission set group, and I'll say manage assignment, and I will add assignment, and the user I created last unit was this one. No expiry. Perfect. Configure org-wide default account and contact visible but not editable for all users. So I will go for the sharing settings, and I'll go for the accounts and contacts. Should be visible but not editable. That means it's public read only. And for the contact as well, interact. Okay. And opportunity visible only, record owner and user higher in the role hierarchy. So that means it's private. Sounds perfect. Okay. Let's check the challenge and wrap it up. We made it. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a lot we learned together today, but I hope it was useful. Thank you very much again for your time, and have a wonderful day.